Hi, I'm Eugene Driscoll. Welcome to Navel Gazing on 103.5 WNHH, New Haven's community radio station. I'm joined by my partner in crime, Valley Indy reporter Ethan Fry.
G'day.
How you doing, Ethan?
Good. Very good.
And we should say we're streaming this live on Facebook as we record. What's today? Thursday, March 8th?
I believe
9th.
it is the 9th. Just looking at my phone.
Says you.
Definitely the 9th.
So that voice you heard, we have a very special guest, our old friend, well, he's not old, but our good friend, Rick Dunne, who's the executive director of the Naugatuck Valley Council of Governments. Rick, thanks for being on Navel Gazing.
Thank you, Eugene. Good to be here.
And I really got to thank you because this is a wacky one because we got all this different stuff going on. So we haven't had you on in a while, probably since the Great Give last year. You were on as part of our Beat Up the Valley Indy segment.
Yes,
You and
my
Kurt
favorite
Miller.
segment of that broadcast.
I think it was our most viewed of all the YouTube videos we did.
Probably because Kurt Miller was on.
Miller is he's like a Kardashian. He's just the man is just ratings.
Yeah.
He's just wherever he goes, people just want to look. Just like that gives us the opportunity to switch gears a little bit. The Main Street widening project. A couple of months ago, the city consultants held on DPZ Partners, right?
Mm-hmm.
Where they were in charge of sort of this public outreach effort and investigation, and not investigation, but they're helping the city come up with a new plan for the downtown redevelopment zone.
Mm-hmm.
And I guess one of the things that just came out of it, there was a P&Z meeting where there was an informal presentation from a developer from Shelton who's talking about possibly buying the LifeTouch property and doing some type of, I guess, modern manufacturing, light manufacturing there, which was one of the things that DPZ Partners suggested in their sort of economic plan for that. They want a mix of uses, but not just like a Subway, Dunkin' Donuts.
Kansas anymore property?
Yes, Ethan knows it as the not.
Graffiti of, yes.
The not in Kansas property,
34.
but you've just taken you just slapped Derby in the face, and the hundreds of people who worked at LifeTouch over the years
posting it before last year's elections.
Right? Yeah, but if you're not familiar, yes, it's the creative graffiti, it's the politically tinged graffiti site. But anyway, so some of this plan seems to be coming to fruition, possibly, maybe, because it was an informal presentation, and we've seen a lot with the LifeTouch property and other properties there that they come before and they have ideas and they just have not happened yet.
Right.
But one of the things that came out was, there was a surprise to, I think, everybody, and I don't think we've talked since then. The widening project that was described as maybe not the best thing for that redevelopment zone.
Sure.
Because there's this plan that's been in the works for a long time where the state wants to widen 34, and that's going to be knocking down some buildings there, some old buildings, and making it better for, because right now it's sort of a broken thing where everyone gets stuck. Now, I had heard that there was going to be a formal request coming eventually from the city for the state to reconsider their plans, taking in some of the DPZ and public comment again. Are we starting this whole process over with the Route 34 widening?
God, I hope no. All right, so let me qualify a few things. Total disclosure, I was the director of the redevelopment agency that originally turned that south side of Main Street into a redevelopment zone. We did the search for a developer. The developer I actually recommended to the Board of Aldermen at that time, which nearly cost me my job, was Avalon Bay, who ultimately ended up being the successful developer of the properties on Canal Street in Shelton. The city went a different direction, and everyone knows the results, or lack thereof. So the downtown charrette and study from DPZ Partners, from their team, funded by the state of Connecticut. Look, I'm a longtime supporter of what's called new urbanism. I'm a member, or have been a member for near 20 years, of the Congress of New Urbanism. I believe in the concepts that they're advocating, and I don't disagree really with
Let me just interrupt,
anything.
because people might not know what the DPZ Partners basically said that the widening project would not be pedestrian friendly and doesn't fit into this new urbanism concept. They basically said it's going to be a highway,
and that's where we disagree. So
It
So-
looks like, by the way, it looks like our live stream isn't working anymore. Go ahead. No, just on the Facebook. We can keep talking.
Yeah, no, I understand. So the downtown area plan for south of Main Street that came out of that study harkens back to a traditional downtown street grid. Wider sidewalks and narrower roads, on-street parking, unique buildings, smaller scale buildings, but a mix of uses, jobs, housing, taking advantage of the transit center that's located there and the state's plans to expand service into that center, which are underway, actually. The infrastructure is almost fully in place for that. So then we get to Route 34. It's no secret that I was a little upset when the
lipstick on a pig.
The comment that I think it was an inappropriate use of the term, because the analogy really indicates that Derby is the pig, which I kind of took offense to. But the issue really is this discussion over whether the treatment of Main Street, of Route 34 through downtown, would preclude any development, successful development on the south side of Main Street.
Yeah, because I thought she meant, when she said lipstick on a pig, I thought she was talking to the plan specifically. Like you're putting a highway in her estimate. You're putting a highway in the middle of Derby, downtown Derby, and then putting some like nice fencing and ornamental lighting. I thought she meant the plan was a pig and but anyway, she may have intended that, but
you're
saying it's not a pig. This is a beauty queen.
You have to understand a couple of things. First of all, the DOT owns the road. The reason my agency got involved originally, when the money was sought, these are some of the last earmarks issued by Congress. And the reason we took control of this is a philosophy my agency has. We have lots of downtowns where state highways are their main streets. And what we didn't want was a highway, a limited access highway, Jersey barrier down the middle, guide rail, fencing. We wanted a more urban treatment, a more pedestrian-friendly treatment that served the purposes of a downtown, while still dealing with the ongoing traffic issues. So I'm actually pretty proud of the work we did in that regard. We shortened distances that pedestrians needed to cross from what they cross today to what they will have to cross in the future under our design. There are high incidents of rear-end accidents, side swipes, and the like on Main Street today, largely because we have no way to make unsignalized left-hand turns, or even signalized left-hand turns, because there's no area of refuge for vehicles or pedestrians who might be caught in the middle of the road. So we had designed something that provided for parking on both sides, provided for two-lane traffic in each direction, so four-lane road, which was one of the state's conditions on the project. Now, normally these lanes are required to be 12-foot wide with 8-foot shoulders. We wanted 10-foot wide with 1-foot shoulders as part of the modification process with the state. We ultimately ended up with 11-foot lanes and 4-foot shoulders. So I'm still in favor of trying to revisit those shoulder widths and limiting that. We were then required to add bicycle and pedestrian access. It's a requirement of projects. It's called Complete Streets. And we built off of that to connect what will be a bike pedway and sort of a promenade on the Derby-Shelton Bridge, connecting to this bikeway, and connect that to Route 34. So that widened the profile of the road as well. We had originally proposed using the greenway, the existing greenway, and coming out and trying to link in front of Home Depot to get to the train station. That was rejected by the state back at that time. So we're now at a point where I think it was unfortunate that the woman who led the DPZ process really blindsided us. I made my staff available to her team every day of that session for the full week. I was there myself at least 3 days. we had a number of conversations, none of which ever broached the subject of the roadway design being a problem for development to occur on the south side of Main Street. And then we walked into the room that night, heard the presentation, and we're basically told, if we're allowed to do what we plan to do, there's no chance of success for development in downtown Derby. And frankly, it sounded like an excuse from someone who was worried about their plan succeeding. But it also exaggerated any of the cautions that you would normally include in a recommendation like that. So, and here's the thing that people don't want to consider. There's one way to cross two rivers in Derby. We're not talking about I-95 where you might have Route 1 running in parallel, you might have a separate Main Street running in parallel, you have 95, you have the Merritt Parkway. There are options for people who want to pass through versus people who want to travel locally. You have that really all along the coast, which is where we were given these examples of why we shouldn't design this roadway. But to get from East Derby, from the New Haven area, from the Waterbury area, from the Danbury area, or from Shelton, you have to cross at least one or two rivers, and that involves using Route 34. There really is no other way to do it. So when we're asking the federal government to fund what could be up to $20 million to improve a roadway, and which, by the way, the money's already in place, I can't do it in such a way where I go and recommend to them, yeah, let's spend $20 million. We're going to make it look good. We're going to put in trees and, differentiated pavement surfaces, pavers and things like that. But we're not going to increase the capacity of the roadway at all or the performance of the roadway at all.
We want cars to go elsewhere. Because that was another thing I was sort of saying. The truckers will find another way around this.
Yeah. It's interesting that if you look on my agency's Facebook page today, there's a link to an article about the use of these POP GPS navigation programs.
What is that, like Wave?
Waze.
I don't use
Waze.
that. I'm old school.
Yeah, Waze.
It has to be spelled like without vowels or incorrect, like with a Z instead of a YS.
Yeah. Right. And then they have like $1 billion in venture funding, and it's around for 2 years. Valley Indy?
Well, actually,
Shoestring 9.
Google now owns Waze.
There you go.
And
like they do everything.
And they still have Google Maps. But these sort of POP GPS navigation software, they send people to roadways that are not capable of handling
Hawkins.
This kind of
Whenever
traffic,
somebody tries to go to my house, they're coming through Hawkins Street near over the hill, and it's like that's a
shortest route isn't.
Yeah, it's sometimes the dumbest way to take. And if tractor trailers do that, that's like a big increase of tractor trailers going up Nutmeg Avenue, the back of Derby High School.
Been significant problems with commercial traffic, even though they tend to use programs by companies called Naugatuck and other ones that make more substantial commercial programs for truckers.
But wait, how did we get on talking about
point is, it's a diversion of traffic. It was stated by the developers in the downtown, let the traffic go over to Shelton and use Route 110.
Oh, right.
It's not Derby's problem. Let it be Shelton's problem. Well, I unfortunately don't have that luxury. I'm the regional planning agency. The state of Connecticut is the state of Connecticut. These are state roadways. We can't just send someone's traffic to another town because this town doesn't want to have it. We have to accommodate traffic appropriately so it serves local business, it serves people who must pass through, and it serves commuters. Would it be better eventually if there were so many jobs in downtown Derby that people didn't have to pass through, that those 26,000 people who commute into Shelton each day or the 48,000 who come south on Route 8 actually, got off and worked in Derby? Would that be? Sure, that would be easier. Be even better if they were able to take the train. But right now, we have a roadway that performs at without getting too technical, level D on an A to F scale. And if we did
flashing back to high school,
if we did what they're asking for, it would probably still perform at a level D. Whereas, if I don't at least give the feds a level C performance they're not going to approve the project at all.
So where now? Because Mayor Naugatuck had sort of come out and issued a press release saying we like what DPZ is saying here. We want to talk to the road gods and see if we can get them to change things slightly. So where does that stand now? Because
Sure. They have, and the city has really done a good job in trying to communicate on this and express their point of view. So I have to say, where I differ with the city up front is they like to say that the community came out at this DPZ conference and demanded that the Route 34 project be substantially altered, scaled back. I can't accept that, and frankly, the federal public participation guidelines can't accept that because we didn't advertise it as this is a hearing where you're going to be able to comment on what Route 34 looks like.
And you had those formal hearings in the past over the years.
Yes, and we're going to have another one now. So
why are you going to have another one now? Is
getting to where we are. So we have the mayor. The mayor has now submitted a letter to us that has
just get on that mic.
That is giving us requests to make some changes. So we think a lot of them are good suggestions. So we're going to work with these suggestions. Once we formally have the communication, we'll schedule a new public information meeting, probably at Derby City Hall. We're going to present what the 2011 preliminary design plan is, which is the last approved design. We're going to then present the requests that the city is making as changes to the project, and then we're going to take public comment.
No, 2011. This has been a long time.
Very long time.
Yeah, because when's the shovel going to be in the ground? When was it supposed to be? And it's got to be obviously delayed now if you're doing public hearings again.
Yeah, the project's been kicked again. We would have anticipated construction in 2018 up until the downtown charrette. Right now, I could not tell you because I'm not sure exactly what route we're going to take. I can tell you a couple things about the project.
But wouldn't that? Let me just. I don't mean to interrupt, but because now there's a new. And we were joking before, but there's a new administration now. The new administration is very much about cutting costs.
There's an election in November too.
There's the election coming
Potential
up.
for.
But and then you've got, I assume, the people on the state and federal level who I mean, if I was the guy who was involved in approving this process or this project, and I do it, and we go through it, we go back and forth for years now, and then all of a sudden now, it's going to be different. Don't they put that on the bottom of the list now? Don't they kind of say, okay, Derby, and you get kind of, I'll do a sound effect. This is the Route 34 project being dropped in the garbage. Like, does it, or to the bottom of the list? Doesn't that? Isn't there a
no?
No.
The project is funded, so I won't get into all the rules of how we fund and obligate funds for projects. So suffice to say, the feds pay 80% and the state will pay 20% because it's a state roadway. Because the federal funding is in place and the state has committed their funding to the project, we're going to proceed as soon as we can get to advertising, which means we have bid documents to put out on the street for contractors to bid on. It'll be bid, it'll be constructed. It's about a 2-year construction period, no matter how you look at it. When that happens, I can't say today because I don't know where we're going.
And that's a pretty significant change because I don't think anybody's reported that. I mean, we're saying that the Route 34 widening project had a start date, and now it doesn't.
It had a projected start date, and we're now kicking the schedule. We have not published a new schedule, but I can tell you that it won't be under construction 2018. That's nearly impossible at this point. Maybe advertised very late 2018, 2019 construction. It's optimistic, I think, but it's possible.
And is it because of this request to change? I'm just trying to boil it down to, would it have happened without, if DPZ had never had that, or if they had their charrette and never made those statements and the mayor didn't write that letter, would we still be on track, or was this going to be delayed either way?
I'd like to answer. That's so hypothetical, I don't know that I could. There are so many other factors involved. Something else could have happened with the design. Short history of the project is that we lost 3 years in what's called NEPA, the National Environmental Policy Act review by the federal government. Had to do with the fact that the state had ordered the demolition of the buildings along the south side of Main Street before there was even a roadway project. And unbeknownst to us, Federal Highway Administration decided they needed to investigate that to make sure that the city didn't conspire with my agency to knock down the buildings so that they could avoid the historic review requirements. And there was some other mistakes made by a contractor on the job who decided that using Google Maps to identify buildings was a better method than actually going out and physically looking, and when she would have realized the buildings were already gone. But that lost 3 years. We then went back into a new public information meeting because so much time had elapsed. We went into final design. We had some changes then from the Staffieri administration, who was then in power. We made those changes, which eliminated parking on the south side of Main Street, and that's when the state wanted us to put the complete streets concept into place with bike ped. And then now we get to this point with the new administration, who had signed off on that plan and transferred the land required from the city to do it. But once the downtown charrette happened, wanted to, in fairness to them, run down every potential chance to implement what they think would be a better design for their downtown project. I don't blame them. I just don't having spent as much time as I've spent with this project, I think that the recommendations from DPC were pie in the sky for Route 34. I don't think it's going to ruin any chances of development. Most developers want the ability to get motor vehicles in and out, none of which precludes TOD development, transit-oriented development, where people live, walk to the train station. We're about to embark on a Route 8 corridor study for new transit mode that actually serves Shelton. So, I know people like to beat up on CT Fast Track, but since it opened, it served 5 million people. It's wildly successful in terms of public transportation projects and how these things go. It's gotten some really bad press, and maybe the state hasn't done such a great job promoting it. We're about to study looking at modes like that to service the Route 8 corridor from Derby Shelton Station, or maybe even a little further north in the Naugatuck Valley, down Route 8 along the Bridgeport Avenue development into Trumbull, into Bridgeport, and then connecting with the main line of New Haven line of Metro North somewhere in Bridgeport.
Let me, I just wanted to stick to Route 34 for a second, though, because I'm having a hard time. Because I'm just thinking about this, as we're talking. I mean, so there's been this project's been going on for so long. It keeps getting changed because new concepts and theories come into development, like these workable. What's it called? Livable streets. What are they?
Complete streets.
Complete streets. It's almost
livable communities.
Livable communities, sustainable communities.
Like children are being born and being raised. Yeah, all new philosophies. At what point does it just not happen though? Because that's amazing to me that it's been around for so long. It's being changed because the world around it is changing, and it keeps having to change to adapt to these new philosophies. Yeah. And every time we get a new mayor in there, they have new.
It's funny. You can actually trace all of this stuff back to Jane Jacobs and a book she wrote in the 60s and early 70s. It's a good philosophy.
Oh, I guess my question is this an indication that this is just it's dragged on for so long it's not going to happen? Like, how confident are you that this will happen in your lifetime?
If
the widening project.
Well, unfortunately, the nature of my business is that we often work on projects that might not be built during our careers. Mm-hmm. We have to take the long view. My agency's official planning horizon is 40 years. So I don't plan to be at the agency for 40 years. So.
But I'm just thinking our average Facebook reader
Robert
is
Moses, come on. Yeah.
But our average reader is let's have, come on now.
Well, yeah, I was going to say
now.
I've only lived in the Valley for 5 years, but the perception you get from just reading reader comments about Route 34 related stuff is, they knock down all those historic treasure buildings with the anticipation that Route 34 would be widened, and I thought those things were always connected, and I guess not. But like that's what the perception isn't it? Or
well, you have to separate the buildings that the state took for the project, which are at the lower block, basically from Caroline Street to Factory Street. The building's still standing. Those are the ones that were taken as part of the project. The rest of the buildings, for the most part, were condemned by the state building official, and they were collapsing long before the city got possession of them. There are a couple of one decent one in between, but not many others. Interestingly enough, the last building that went down was the predecessor to the Sterling Opera House. It had a theater on the top floor. It was called the Gould Armory Building. It was condemned in 1890. For public occupancy.
So we think this was a long time.
But the point is that the project itself is it deals with so many different interest groups, and then when the public becomes frustrated or believes something to be true because it's been repeated or they've heard it or someone else said it, it makes having a civil conversation very difficult. I can't explain to people if they don't want to understand all of the pieces that go into something like this and the changing political winds over a decade. I can't explain to them why it takes so long. I can technically tell them why, but it's hard to justify a reason. Look, not to get too far afield, last night having a conversation about the ramp we just designed and built at Division Street, northbound from Griffin Hospital.
Which I love.
I love. I'm glad to hear you say that.
I do. And I also love the in front of the deli, the left turn only going to Wakely Avenue.
And it would be nice if we would have been allowed to fix that whole intersection
on the other side. Yeah.
But the point is, people are complaining, well, how come you didn't build a southbound exit ramp? How come you didn't fix the ramp? Well, we designed them. We sent them out to public hearing, and they were rejected by the public. The DOT listens to the public. The city, my agency, listens to the public. Public participation, bottom-up planning are integral to the process. They're required under federal regulation. It is the way we do things. Some people don't like it. Louder voices may be in the minority. And we deal with that on a daily basis. I'm sure you deal with it on a daily basis. But we make our best effort to continue to go out to the public and to gain the best information that we can.
And then what's interesting is you have people like you're talking about that those exit ramps. The public sentiment when you might have changed something in a plan might have been 5 years ago, and then the thing's built, and then it's there, and then you have a new public sentiment who wasn't there 5 years ago, so it's almost impossible to make everybody happy, I guess.
It is. Well, it's impossible to make everyone happy.
There are people who are
get on to Mike.
There are people who
just walk in and start working here.
Naysay, people like me who are just cynics, and naysay everything. People constant struggle.
There are lots of people who just fundamentally have given up on government serving them or government working well, and it's hard to have a conversation with those people about the mechanics of getting a project done and getting public opinion, and dealing with people who live in an area versus people who live outside an area but are served by a facility like Main Street, because we do have to balance all of it. Look, I live in Derby. Given my druthers, I'd rather a 2-lane road with a dedicated opposing left-hand turns down the middle and parking on both sides and 15-foot wide sidewalks. I think that would personally be the best thing for Derby. But it won't handle even the cars we have on the road today. And there's not even a peak versus off-peak difference on Main Street in Derby. We see a relatively steady flow of traffic throughout the entire day and on weekends.
Yeah.
It's not like it just gets backed up at rush hour.
34, it's just...
Yeah. And the bridge there's all those entrances. Everyone's trying to get on the bridge onto Route 8.
Yeah, and as you said, like a state road is like a main street for so many towns. Like it is in where we are right now in Ansonia, and like after 5, there's not much.
I want to know what you did to our Facebook Live thing, Ethan.
I did not do anything.
We had 7 minutes of gold, and then it just went off.
But in my 19 communities off the top of my head, Obviously, I come from the lower valley, so I know these better. But Shelton, Derby, Ansonia, Seymour, Oxford, to the extent that it's a main street. Middlebury, Woodbury.
Where are they? We don't even know.
Southbury. They're in my region. I have Bethlehem.
Fruitberry.
I do. Don't laugh.
Sounds like you're naming cereals.
I know a guy who was grew up in Bethlehem.
But
we don't care about.
But most of those, with the exception of I think Waterbury, almost all of those main streets are state highways, and it's always a battle because DOT, working from the state design manual and what's called the AASHTO manual, which is the National Professionals Association of State Highway Officials.
Of course.
Working from that manual, you get a highway, and frankly, we didn't design a highway for Route 34 in Derby. It was a very pedestrian friendly road, but the idea that you would have unsignalized crossings of 3 and 4 lanes so that Minerva Street could continue on the south side of Main Street and Caroline Street could continue. It's just not.
Let me ask you a question, because the mayor has sent a letter asking the state, is it to the state for some changes?
No, my agency is the designer of the project. We're technically a contractor to the state.
So you know what I mean, I'm just saying the mayor because she's the I don't know if it's I'm not specifically speaking for her, but if all those suggestions of which you're aware were to be adopted into this project, would the federal government still fund it? Are these game changing?
No.
Okay.
I think what the city is asking for now. I mean, we were, just to be clear, we were talking about what came out of that downtown study.
DPZ charrette.
The DPZ charrette. What the city is asking for, I believe, are reasonable requests that we can probably negotiate with the department. My people can model the changes.
Deep state. You'll be talking to the deep state.
That's right.
I just love that term.
But my staff will be able to model, and our consultants will be able to model the requests that they're asking for to prove that they work, and that they won't inhibit traffic flow. I have concerns with a couple, but basically the city's asking us to put parking back on both sides of Main Street instead of just the north side, which is a good idea. Get rid of the bike ped facility, which is going to require the state's permission. Use the greenway behind Main Street, and then the city's going to have to make a commitment to connect from somewhere along Caroline Street to come out off the greenway and out to Main Street and get to the Home Depot so we can get to the train station.
The bike
ped has to connect to the train station.
Everybody's riding bikes.
Well, people walking.
No,
I mean,
I know.
You've got almost 600 units of housing on Canal Street in Shelton. Potentially, that is a huge market. If we get half-hour peak train service on the half hour and return service in the evening, that becomes a very, very viable commuting route. So people can walk or ride their bikes from there. It's a big deal.
Let me ask, because we only have about...
Let me just quickly run through what the city's
Dunne's
asking
taking
for.
over the show.
I am. So they've gone back to 11-foot request for 11-foot lanes with 2-foot shoulders, which I hope we can.
So they basically asked for everything that you guys asked previously and was already rejected.
No. I'm getting the hard ones.
All right.
They want us to eliminate the dedicated left-hand turn lanes along Main Street to make the turns. And we're eliminating all the one-way circulation from the side streets. So we're taking basically Elizabeth, Minerva, and 3rd Street out of the project. They're going to remain two-way streets. They will no longer be one-way streets. We'll eliminate the left-hand turn lanes that are unsignalized. So the only signalized ones will be at Elizabeth, Olivia, and Water. Little concerned that the stacking lane that will be provided might not be long enough so that cars would have their tails out into the operating lanes if there were more than 3 vehicles waiting to make a left-hand turn. But we'll model it. We'll run the models. We'll see if it works. Their goal is to narrow that median. They want an 8-foot median everywhere except where we're going to have the turning lane. And then basically, I think we're able to get rid of everything else. They do want to remove the parking lot at Bridge Street. They see that as a construction site for new development.
And I'm getting NPR photographing Rick as he's speaking.
So we think there's a reasonable request. So what we'll do is we'll send them up to the state. We'll schedule a public information meeting. We will then take comment from the public for at least a 30-day period about these proposed changes. We will then reinitiate the final design process. Yes, it'll cost us a little more money regardless of what method we choose or what aspects get changed. It will lengthen the timeline, hopefully not too much. What we're looking for is to not re-trigger NEPA, the Environmental Policy Act, which includes everything from historic review to what's in the ground. The word environmental tends to be misleading. It covers all kinds of things.